Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick. Welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. What is the awakening? This is the moment in time when humanity rises up out of the darkness. Who is awakening? Each one of us present on planet Earth today, reclaiming our sovereignty, seeking a greater possibility for our reality and looking for solutions. We know being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If we can transform ourselves, we can change the world. Guests on Her Conversations will speak to your spirituality, sensuality and soul. Listen to their stories, hear how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. My guest on this week's Her Conversations is Karmic astrologer and tarot reader Fiona Aedgar. She is claircognizant, clairvoyant, and has the ability to see past lives. During our conversation, Fiona talks us through the astrology for 2021 and the shift into the Age of Aquarius. We talk about how the changing times will impact our spiritual growth, the importance of reconnecting with our ancestral roots, and also Fiona talks about the chart of the most polarising figure alive today, Donald John Trump. So as always, I begin by asking our guests. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel you're most her?
I feel that I'm most her when I am being spiritual. I'm a pagan, and a couple of years ago, I really got in touch with my ancestral spirituality, and it kind of really reawakened something in me that I felt I previously was unaware that had been disconnected. And it's kind of been so strengthening for me and empowering. And I really truly feel that I'm 39 now, and I really didn't know who I was until I started to connect with this. It connects you with your ancestors. It connects you with the land that you live on. That's when I feel most like myself. And obviously when I'm practicing astrology.
Perfect. And just when did you actually develop an interest in astrology and decide that you were going to make it into your life's work?
I started to study astrology about 20 years ago. And it was actually my older sister that got me into it. She had a book about rising signs, and I mean, we all know what our star signs are. You know, you're a Cancer, you're a Gemini, but that particular kind of astrology is really not very accurate because it only focuses on the sun sign. Astrology is much more complex than that. So I started to study it then. It was always an interest. I was interested in many different branches of spirituality. My great-grandparents were spiritualists, which was actually very unusual at the time. So in 2013, I decided that I would start to practice professionally. And I never looked back. And I'm doing what I love every day. It just doesn't get any better.
I think that's great. And like I said to you just before, I have such a basic knowledge of astrology, and the more I actually delve into a little bit deeper, I'm like, okay, there's such a beautiful way of understanding personalities and the movement of times and events, internal and external, around us. A couple of things I want to ask you. Firstly, you mentioned most people will gravitate and look at their sun sign, but what would you say would be the main things that people need to take into account if they're thinking, okay, I just want to get a very quick snapshot version of an idea of a reading for me? If I was just going to do something really quick, what are the kind of basics that you'd need to know?
Well, first of all, if you're going for an astrology reading, you need to have an accurate time of birth, because one of the most important placements on a birth chart is the ascendant. And it's also called the rising sign because it's the sign that was rising on the horizon at the exact moment of your birth. So it changes signs quite frequently, which is why you would need your birth time. But really, everything is important on the birth chart But the most personal aspects are going to be your moon, your sun, and your rising sign. The moon sign is often overlooked, okay? We tend to focus on the sun sign, but in karmic astrology, we tend to grow into the sun sign as we get older. The moon sign is where your comfort zone is. It's going to be connected to your inner feelings, your emotions, your instincts. People that know you well see your moon sign. It's also connected to your past lives. So really, it's the true personality that you have built up over many lifetimes.
I need to delve into my moon sign a little bit more then, actually. I'm aware that there's so many different types of astrology. Which astrology do you practice the most?
I'm a Western astrologer. I practice tropical astrology because I am from Europe.
Yeah.
And the archetypes that are present within the zodiac, my DNA recognizes those. And Western astrology is also very connected to the seasons and the equinoxes. So, for example, Aries, the sign of Aries starts on the spring equinox, and it embodies those energies of springtime when everything starts to come alive.
As everyone wants to know, we're just at the beginning of a new year, and already, days in, we can see that there's so much turmoil and misinformation and confusion and fear on the face of the planet. And I think with a new year, everyone wants to the new year as we call it, let's put it that way, like the January New Year that we call it. We always want to look at the year and go, okay, this is going to be my year. These are our resolutions. But we're coming out of 2020 in itself. And then, we had the big conjunction on the 21st of December. So how is that going to roll into what's coming for 2021 and the next forthcoming years as well, with us being aware that we're moving into a new age and we're technically stepping into the Age of Aquarius? What are you seeing for the forthcoming year, but also over the age, and how things are going to transpire and how things are going to shift for us on a human level?
Okay, so the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction in Aquarius that you referred to, that happened on the 21st of December, that's really going to affect the next 20 years until we reach another Jupiter and Saturn conjunction. It's a mixed bag in terms of, does this make me feel good, or is this going to work against me? I think the main thing that we see with this particular conjunction is that stuff like AI, futuristic kind of sci-fi stuff, the transhumanism agenda, are some of the downsides of this. We are going to be in a battle with those. I hate to say it, I hate to be the bearer of negativity. There's always going to be, but I have to be realistic. That's what a real astrologer does. I can't decode it, but we're in for a roller coaster ride. Okay, lots of highs, lots of lows. The plus side is that many people are starting to awaken. It is the beginning of the Age of Aquarius. How do we awaken? We awaken through trauma. So we awaken by coming to the realization that something isn't quite right here. And let's face it, 2020 was the year that many people started to realize that those people that talk on their TV box were not telling them the truth. And that's fantastic. Saturn in Aquarius, though, is all about social distancing. It doesn't get more socially distant than Saturn in Aquarius. So that's going to be an ongoing thing. They are going to drag this out one way or another. But the plus side is that, we're starting to find our true tribes. Lots of people that never fit in anywhere. We're finding people like us. Have you found that to be true?
Totally. And I'd say, I could, like I said before we pressed record, I could feel that there was a real shift of what I was prepared to put up with, or what I felt I deserved. It was like a deserving level. There was like a point where I'm like, no more. I've been entertaining certain things, and that kind of happened towards the middle to the end of 2019. And then for the last 4 months of 2019, going into just before the beginning of then this new situation that we've been in terms of lockdown, pandemic, whatever, that was me really just like cutting ties with long held toxicity. So that then when I went into March 2020 going onwards, there was a real kind of freedom, because I was no longer fitting into the expectation of those people that I'd spent time around with that were really toxic for me, because I was playing a very diminished version of myself, because to be anything other than that was a real problem. And it was just a real battle trying to like fit into expectation and be myself at the same time. It was a real kind of like confusing ideal of like being this one person here and then being somebody else who I wanted to be. So it gave me real space. And then into 2020, then just like any kind of like stragglers that were around, it was just very easy to go, hang on a minute, it's very easy for me to clip this on. So it's a real sense of freedom. There was, I suppose that when you're talking about social distancing and me being an introvert, didn't really feel it so badly in terms of the isolation that other people felt, but I used it more to my advantage than I think I'd ever done before. And then as a result of that, I really started to connect with people on a deeper level, and almost out of the blue, then work connections started to come in terms of me really using the skills that I have in terms of communication, in terms of what I'm able to do, in terms of producing, in terms of research and being a questioner. So all of those things like literally just came together, like, you know, that last little thing on the Rubik's Cube, and it all, the puzzle was done. It's like, here I am, this is it now. And this past year has been a real grounding in of that, and feeling on a real kind of purpose and a real mission as a result of that, even in the face of noticing how many people who look like they had it all together are really shrinking back into their shell, into fear, into confusion, into really holding on to something that is apparent to many people who you can say are awakened, are seeing that structures are absolutely, completely disintegrating. And the difference between the people who are seekers of truth and wanting to really live in that space and that vibration and that dimension, and then to people who are holding on to this old paradigm, which is just fast dissolving, but somehow not being aware of it, you know, and when you're trying to bring truth towards those people, they will almost, they're defending the sinking ship in its way. And actually, this is one question for you. Do you think now that we're moving into Aquarius, which is air, and then out of the kind of earth energy that we've been in, does that then affect different signs? Is there like would there be some common ground in that the people who are kind of gravitating towards finding their soul family, wanting to create communities outside of society, be that either online or physically trying to do that, do we have something in common astrologically?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be different for each person because we all have different charts. But certainly because this conjunction happened in the element of air, as the next one will, and the one after that, air signs are probably going to feel it the most. But it's going to affect us all, and those kind of communities are going to spring up more and more. You know, finding your tribe, because we're not fitting into the mainstream anymore. Eventually, there's not going to be any mainstream. You know, the comfort zone, Uranus continues to transit through the sign of Taurus. And, you know, our old lives are gone. And I mean that in the best way, the best positive way. I don't want to go back to my old life.
No.
I'm glad that people are waking up and seeing it for what it is, because I'm sure that you agree with me. A lot of us have known that this was going on for, 10 years, 20 years plus. It's just, it was more subtle. It was not out in the open so much. they're being so obvious about it that, you know, I don't understand why more people don't see it, but, you know, they'll get there. We have to be patient. We do have to be compassionate with them as well. But I also think that it's a mistake to kind of forcibly try and wake people up, you know, bombard them with, you know, links from alternative media or videos or whatever. It's really a waste of time. They're not going to connect with it.
Yeah.
They're not there yet. And what is the result of that is that you're lowering your own frequency. You're lowering your own energy, and we need to be strong. This world is never going to change until all of us are the majority of us are resonating at a very high frequency. And if we're in a constant state of fear and stress, and you know, when you're up until 5 a.m. watching all of this stuff on YouTube, you're not in the best place. So that's the best example that we can give them. It's the right thing to do. I think we kind of just need to chill and let them awaken by themselves.
I think for some people it's hard. I've learned that if ever there was a New Year's resolution, or is just at some point there needs to be a time where you're like, my job is not to go around trying to prod people awake, you know, it's just to start to do and build on the side that I'm at. So as and when they do pop out of whatever slumber that they're in, they can see that there are people on the other side that are already building their lives, that look thriving. You know, it's not this crackpot, crazy, fringe situation that it seems like it has been for many a time. And, you know, hats off to the people who've been the super mavericks, you know, and have been out there for like 20, 30 years on their own, just alerting everyone to it, and that we've trailed on behind them. How do you see, I mean, if we talk about 2020 and now we're moving into 2021, what have you seen in your reading for the year is the main things that we need to be ready to navigate and live with and through?
Okay, so the whole month of January is pretty bonkers. So it's kind of dominated by the planet Uranus, which rules fanaticism, freedom fighters, sudden events, unexpected events, bombshells. So that goes direct on the 14th of January. That makes it a very volatile planet. A couple of days later, it squares the planet Jupiter. So that can potentially be violence. Okay, we've already had a bit of that all last year. Potentially issues with air travel. It can also be your nervous system is actually ruled by Aquarius, and I want everyone to be aware that that is definitely under attack. They're attacking our nervous systems. We also have a Mercury retrograde that kicks in on January 30th. So the interesting thing about this one is that it's making a conjunction to the moon in the chart of the USA. Nothing is going to be clear for those guys over there. Whoever it is that, you know, does ultimately take the presidency, it's not going to be accepted by the other side, and they're going to rebel. This is something that's going to be continuous for at least the next 4 years, you know. The USA is coming up to its Pluto return, so it's a massive power shift. I feel concerned for the guys over there, but really for all of us, no matter where we are in the world, it's just all about comfort zones being shaken up. You know, the continuous war and information that we're seeing, the censorship on social media. That's going to be an issue. What we need to do is just to, I think, make other choices.
Yeah.
We don't have to be on certain sites, do we? I mean, nothing's forcing us to be there. There are alternatives that we can go to, so we have a choice. And, you know, we just need to do that. There's a really tricky aspect that's going to happen 3 times throughout this year. and the planet Saturn is making a square to Uranus. So everything's involving Uranus this year. It's all like, you know, chaos, freedom versus control. This has been present in the astrology of the Great American Depression and also the recession that we saw in 07, 08. So we are looking at, obviously, a financial recession, you know, a financial crisis.
Yeah.
So people need to be aware of that. It's better to be forewarned about it, about the event, so that we can prepare. As we go into April, Pluto goes retrograde, and so does Saturn. I assume then it'll be similar to last year in that a lot of the lockdowns that we have in the UK and Ireland are going to be loosened up a little. So that's, you know, those are the main events. We have Mercury retrograde 3 times, like we always do. But the main issues here are freedom versus the control system, the war on information, the financial issues. But there's a beautiful spiritual energy that starts to come in on the month of May. So Jupiter enters Pisces. Pisces is the sign of advanced psychic abilities, telepathy, spiritual powers. So I see this as a wave of awakening energy that comes in and feels very supportive. There is a bit of a downside, is that the misinformation, the propaganda machine is going to be on overdrive. But you know what? There's a very simple solution to that. Work on your own intuition. Your intuition doesn't develop by reading news articles or watching videos. It develops by meditation. It develops by trusting your heart. You know, what's your first instinct to a situation, a person? And we can use this in our personal relationships. Trust it. Trust your own judgment. We've become reliant upon so-called experts to educate us on everything, and we've lost our inner voice. It's so important. When you trust your own intuition, very little is going to fool you.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, you know, that's pretty much it. We do have the usual retrogrades, but nothing too dramatic. It's just the issues that I just listed, you know, the finances, rebellions and uprisings. That's going to continue. The saving grace for the year is actually Chiron in Aries. So I'll tell you a little bit about Chiron. Chiron was a centaur, and he was adopted by the god Apollo and his sister Artemis. He never fit in anywhere because the other centaurs were very beastly. They were drinking and fornicating. And because he had been adopted by a god, he was knowledgeable, he was wise, he was skilled in astrology, astronomy, natural medicine, healing, music, poetry. So he didn't really fit in. Like a lot of us spiritual folks, we struggle to fit in. And this year, Chiron in Aries is actually making a really supportive aspect to both Jupiter and Saturn. Being authentic, being yourself. Who am I? What is my identity? Those are all things for each of us to look at this year, because I don't fit in anywhere. You know, I'm an astrologer. I grew up in the countryside in Northern Ireland. I never really started to fit in until my late 30s, where I found other pagans. So I found other astrologers. So find your tribe that's nourishing and that feels good to you.
And do you see anything in terms of the charts that you do that relates to, I know you're talking about a lot of disinformation, but also do you recognize anything that would also indicate disclosure in terms of like more truth coming to light like hidden, hidden truths coming to light, secrets being revealed, people actually being recognized for who and what they are in terms of the deceptions that we may have been under. Do you think that's something that's happening now? I mean, a lot of people have awoken to that already, but on a bigger level, in terms of getting to the point where we've got that tipping point of people that are more awake.
Yes, absolutely. I think that's really going to increase and continue for this year and many years to come. I think that, a lot of people are going to be deeply shocked by the uncovering, the great unveiling, but it's all part of the awakening process. You're shocked, you're horrified, you're scared, but then you begin to heal.
And also with the health issue that we have, and the push to have people take the vaccine in order to, there is no evidence, there's no strong evidence that that's going to help us, really, if people are believing that there is a virus there anyway, before we even go into that. How is the push on that being a mandatory and forced ideal in order for people to regain their freedoms? How long is that going to be in place, or how successful is that idea going to be for people to like regain their freedoms in terms of movement or working or access to potentially money or leisure, any of those things? How far will they be able to go with that agenda before it doesn't work?
It's hard to say. It's hard to say astrologically, like how successful they will be. I think that we will be up for a struggle, especially people that work in offices. I think that we all have a moral duty, if you can see what's happening, to make the right choice. Because the more of us that do that, it's all about collectivism. The more of us that refuse to do that, then the less likely it is to become mandatory. It's something that I was skeptical about, honestly. I didn't think, I've read all of the horror stories, you won't be able to do this, you won't be able to do that. Personally, I'm choosing to believe that it's not going to go that way for us in the UK, at least. I'm not sure about other countries, but I really don't feel in my heart that they will achieve that, that they'll achieve their goal of everyone being vaccinated. I just don't see it. I could be wrong, but I just don't feel that.
And it seems like, because it's such an enormous number of people that you're going to have to convince that this is the way, and have you got the manpower in order to be able to successfully achieve that? Especially with the stories that are coming out of the people that have had it, and certain people are already experiencing negative results and negative side effects as a result of that. And I don't know, it just seems, because, like, to go back to what you were saying, and I agree with you on this as well, how because people are so dependent on external forces and experts and for their information and for their guidance, to be so locked off and so removed from your inner knowing and your intuition and that part of you that's just like, hang on a minute, I can take care of my health. I understand what this is. Certain things are not making sense to me. I went to the supermarket earlier, and it's just like I'm the only one who's kind of walking around the shop without a face covering on, because I'm just like, it doesn't make any sense, particularly as the weather's just so like hot, so cold and icy. I need to breathe, and I like to feel that in me, as opposed to then restricting, just on a sensible level, but then noticing the look that people give me. I mean, it doesn't really bother me. I'm like 6 foot tall, so they don't really approach me with anything. But it does, I do see people kind of like, jump out the way, jump into the middle of the road because I'm walking down past them, and and I've kind of got past the point of being annoyed by it now. There's part of me that's just like trying to understand what energy they must be living in, because to be so scared, to see another person approaching you and to be filled with fear at the thought of that person will be the one person that will give you the thing and then your life will be over. It boggles my mind, to be like, how scared do you have to be? But then I suppose if you're sitting in front of the box all day at prescribed moments and receiving that information, there's nothing but, fear upon fear upon fear. How are you going to get out of that? I don't know. It's like, how do people get in contact with their spirituality? It's like, I always wonder about how the media itself will reconfigure itself, how it will fall, at what point the people that will awaken, because I believe there are people that won't get there in this lifetime, will actually literally look and go, hang on, the BBC's not telling me what I need to know. And it's harder for different generations that have grown up with it being such an institution and a stalwart and a paragon of virtue and good living and righteousness and all that is British and is good, to then find out that, that where you went to for everything to shape your entire reality has been a lie. I have so many thoughts and so many concerns, especially about the traumatic fallout of that.
Yeah, I think some people, when they do find out that they have been lied to for all of their lives, it will ignite that fire in them again. It'll make them feel like fighting for something. So that can be a good thing. Fear is a very powerful weapon.
Oh, gosh.
And when, at the beginning of January 2020, I was on another podcast, and that's exactly what I said when I was asked to predict about the year ahead. And at that point, the virus hadn't, we hadn't got a lockdown. I don't even think the news about the virus had really affected the UK.
No, it wasn't mainstream. I think it'd been circulating on Twitter. So I had a couple of friends that were aware of it, but it hadn't hit the mainstream news.
Yeah. So, but I knew, because Pluto was going to be conjunct Saturn, that it was all about fear, control. And, a scared population is just like a flock of sheep that just can be, shoved into the pen and told to do it. That's what we need to get out of. And it's really only in the last couple of thousand years that people have become so fearful, because during pagan times, they had no fear of death. They saw death as something, you were going to die with honor, and you went to rejoin the gods in the afterlife. But then we all got told that we're going to hell, and we're bad, and we're dirty, and we're sinners. And people started to think that they were these awful, awful creatures who were going to be punished in the afterlife. So when you live with that fear, and it starts to seep through the generations, and it wakens everyone. They have a fear of death. They have a fear of sickness. They're scared of getting punished. They believe in these false gods on the TV that give them all of this information because they're so in touch with their intuition. That's basically where we are. So my advice to anyone is to, what are your native ancestral spiritual practices? Because that's going to activate your DNA. That's going to make you feel different, empowered. You lose your fear. And this is why when the globalists have gone into many countries throughout the world, the first thing that they did was get rid of the ancestral spirituality, and also the indigenous population. That's how you conquer a country, is you get rid of those things. Because the people that are indigenous to the land, they carry the energy and the spirit of the land within their DNA, within their blood. And when you get rid of those people, you conquer the land, and then you conquer the people. So I think that everyone, no matter where you're from, no matter what your heritage is, get in touch with your roots, get in touch with your ancestors. That's so important. That's why it was so important to generations that came before us. And no one really does it now, do they?
No.
They don't remember their ancestors. It's sad.
It is, and you know, when you're saying about people being afraid of dying, that is the main one, really. It's like, you know, that's because you're pushing deaths all the time. It's like, look at how high the number of deaths are, and it's this, and it's this graphs, and it's, you know, people, when was the last time most people looked at a graph? It's like, you were at school, and even then most people didn't care about graphs. But yet you're pushing this death thing and this finality of life. But then it's almost like everyone, like you say, everyone is just so penned in with fear, because you're scared of dying, you're scared of getting ill, you're scared of standing up for anything that is outside of the norm, you're scared of sticking out, you're scared. It's just like this whole kind of fear that just keeps you in this almost like postage stamp cell space of existence, because it isn't even really a life of any sort, really. So I can totally get how, I mean, even if you remove the fear of death, then it's like, well, you know, what are you going to do? You know, take me out. That's not a problem. I've experienced death of others around me to such an extent now that I don't have a problem with it, because I have such a relationship with people that are on the other side. It's not a problem. So, you know, you'd have to come with something really interesting to like scare me into doing something that didn't feel or seem right for me. What I wanted to ask you also is about the rise of technology, the rise of suppressed technology as well, which is, there's so much information and talk about that. Do you see that opening up on the charts for this year or the coming years? And also in terms of money, how we start to then use either the monetary system that should be backed by gold, or creating a new way of exchange that doesn't require a currency of any sort.
Yeah, I think that technology is really being weaponized against us. I mean, starting with our smartphones, you know, the targeted ads. I think of something and it comes up on my screen. You know, and I've spoken to a lot of people about this, and they've all experienced the same thing. And it's so, you know, you haven't been speaking about it, you haven't typed it. People probably hear this, like a normie will listen to this and say she's crazy, but it's happening. Yeah. You know, it's happening. And I actually predicted that this would happen. There was a Mars retrograde in Aquarius, and it was in 2018. Aquarius is the sign of everything futuristic and sci-fi. These advanced technologies that, you know, we had no idea that they were ever going to develop them. And, you know, this year we've got Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. So I do think that it's going to continue, because so many people are completely unaware of the risks connected to that. Artificial intelligence is I believe it's dangerous. I think we're going down a very dark path. What can people do? Well, you know, get rid of your smartphone. Get a brick that they used to use like 20 years ago. You know, the ones that you could drop on the floor and like they would still work afterwards.
Yeah, Nokia 3210.
Yeah.
Indestructible Nokia 3210 with Snake.
Yes, I used to love that game. Yeah, I think that we just need to make small changes and not go along with it. And these those things that you can, you know, that you have for your home, what do they call it? Siri? Yeah,
those talking robots that just never really turn off. Siri and Alexa and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, they're concerning. I mean, even WhatsApp are, I was just watching a little video earlier about their new terms and conditions, but then even interestingly, it was on the 20th of December, Instagram and Facebook's new terms and conditions as well. So all of these things they're kind of, you know, people are going, oh my God, they're changing the terms and conditions. I'm not 100% sure that the terms and conditions changed, more so than they just became it just became that people decided that they were going to read the terms and conditions, because they're so lengthy, and like contracts and legalese is the most exhausting type of language to immerse yourself in. But because we just open accounts and just click agree, and we don't really realize what we're agreeing to, and especially when we keep just allowing updates to come in. But for the most part, especially with WhatsApp, which initially was set up to be a platform that had end-to-end encryption on it, but eventually got sold to Facebook, is that they're then able to infiltrate your phone basically and see all the different transactions that you make financially, see who's on your contact lists. And there's more to it with like what you're saying with when you're looking at your phone and thinking and something comes up, they're tracking every move that you make, your eye movement, what you're reacting to, all those little cute emojis that you have on Facebook, and you're liking a certain thing. They're just like really honing into who you are as a personality, and what things anger you, because you tell them. You know what I mean? It's almost like what's that program again, Big Brother, where they used to get the most opposite people and just stick them in a house together, knowing at some point that they're going to get triggered and it's going to make amazing television. It's like you go on Facebook and you see things and you tell people on a scale of like 5 emotions or so how that is affecting you, so then they can start to like feed you into a certain thing, and then be able to like lead you down, and know what it is that's going to send you which way or the other. I don't know if you ever watched any of Cyrus A. Parser's work.
No, I have not.
He's a great guy in terms of, he talks a lot about AI and how it manipulates the minds, and exactly all the things that you've talked about. It's like it's set up like that. It's set up to program people in particular to really feed into the Trump derangement syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
If ever there was a representation of mass mind control and Pavlov's dog, is that you only have to like mention his name. Just, you don't even have to go any deeper than that. You only have to mention his name and people start foaming at the mouth. This is not a natural reaction to just a word. It's not normal at all, that in itself is. But that also lays into a lot of unhealed trauma, especially within Black community, because what they've done is like tied him in and then put racist under there and put a load of things, and then that's the first thing that people will come out to you about who he is. And I'm like, oh no, maybe we just have to like kind of like make sure that where you got that information from is more than just a meme on Facebook that told you that. Mm-hmm. If you're furnishing that with higher, like better information than you being triggered by something you saw on Facebook. But then also, like you said, it comes back down to that healing, and knowing your intuition and your inner voice, and just really asking some questions like, why do I dislike this person so much when I don't really know that much about them apart from a picture?
Yeah, and it's the attack on masculinity as well. Healthy masculinity. They don't want that anymore in the West. They want kind of feminized men. Yeah. And he's an alpha male. He's assertive. They just despise that. Yeah. And a lot of people come from broken homes now. Parents divorced, and that continues to be a wound. So they kind of project all of those issues onto him. Definitely. I feel deeply sorry for him. Yeah.
I mean, when you actually kind of stand back and look at, see him as a person, you know what I mean? Yeah. See him as a person, see him as a man who's, got a past and got a family, a wife, children, grandchildren. It's like, who knows what? And then to be able to, this is the part that I have to take my hat off to, like most of us, we try to be as strong as possible, but it's like, how many times can you take people saying things about you that is wrong, spreading the worst possible rumors about you, trying to like trip you up constantly? And then, you know, as we've seen over the past couple of days, the people that you had and thought were right by your side just like at the last minute turn around and do the Judas on you. That is just like, how do you then, you know, pick yourself up and still go back in and still try not to crumble? Because like, I don't know if I'd be able to stand, you know, if I wouldn't go down into a pit of depression or just be as bitter as hell.
I think that I've looked ahead in his astrology, and in 2024 his astrology is fantastic. I've always said, regardless of the result of the election, that he's going to come up on top. Biden's astrology looks pretty awful. I wouldn't be surprised if he was retired, in inverted commas, by May. You know, he has a very inappropriate chart for a politician, and he's made a lifelong career out of it, and he's done very little. He's achieved basically nothing. His you know, it's just not a good chart for a leader. On the other hand, Donald Trump has leadership written all over his chart, you know, honesty. So everything that they try to say that he isn't, he actually is. That's why astrology is such a valuable skill, because you can cut through all of the bullshit. Yeah. And you can see a person for how they are. You can see their strengths, their weaknesses, where they're supposed to be going in this incarnation, and pretty much everything, you know, about that person. So I've supported him since 2016. Before that, I never really thought about him. I knew who he was, but I didn't, you know, he was just a guy that's a very rich person in America that had been on TV and was adored and loved for decades before he decided to run for presidency and take on the deep state.
And that's the thing. It's like, why bother? Just, you know, out of you know, you've made all these achievements. You've got like a really comfortable lifetime. Everyone is your friend, pretending, you know. So, and for most people, that's enough to have everyone seem to like you, and you're the popular guy, and everyone, you know, all the famous people like you, all the rap stars like you. You've got a gorgeous wife and family. You've got all the money that you need, and your business is thriving. Then you're like, do you know what? I think I'm gonna like really do something on my purpose. But then when I consider, I'm not taking on the United States, but when you find your purpose, and I suppose you'd feel this as well, is when you kind of slip into a stream of like, oh my God, this is why I was born. You can't actually help but get on board with that. It's like, I can't do anything else. It's like, it may look like I lose everything externally and materially, and be walking in danger. It kind of puts a fire inside of you. It's just like, you cannot not but do that. And when I speak to people who properly see him, they're coming from their hearts as well. They're coming from a place of their own intuition. They've dealt with stuff where they're actually kind of cleaning their own healing, and they can see through all of the information and the disinformation and the projection that everybody else who is like, he's that, they can look and they can see a person. And I was, you know, I didn't really spend that much time, you know. I knew that it was I kind of knew who he was. He was kind of in the far periphery of my existence. It didn't really matter that I knew who he was. And interestingly, when I was kind of in a spiritual group that was very much about women, you can imagine, you know, it was very much about the rise of the woman, and but their thing to kind of counter that wasn't necessarily about marrying it up with men. If anything, there was this like constant thing of toxic masculinity. So then if you then ever saw a male of his type, that alpha male, that no shit, you know, it's just like, I'm going to call it like it is. I'm not going to pretty it up and tell you. It's like, if it's bullshit, I'm going to tell you it's bullshit. If it, you know, I'm going to tell you straight up, but I'm also gonna be a man that needs a feminine woman, as opposed to this kind of masculine woman that was coming through as well. So it was this, it was within, and that was another thing I had to clip away from as well, in terms of like cleaning house, because I was like, this isn't helping me, because, you know, when the shit hit the fan in the community, they became really hypocritical. And weren't supportive of women when they were really saying that they were for women. And again, it was that kind of confusion of like, well, actually, there's more than one, you know, gender. There's like 573, and you're just like, this is confusing bullshit, you know. You know, and I remember doing a panel. It's still on the internet somewhere if you want to dig it out, where I'm just kind of going, well, maybe I'm, you know, and I'm questioning my own sanity here, going like, well, maybe I'm just not open-minded enough if there's more than one gender. The fuck spell was I under at the time, you know? But and then when you come out of it, you're like, no, there's two. It's not that complicated, you know. But we can embody aspects of feminine and masculine, and I suppose that needs to be redressed as well, because seeing so many men in fear right now, just you know, in how they're showing up in the world, how they're, you know, I'm seeing them not necessarily even being able to like stand up and protect their families. And it's not for them to be going out in bayonets in the street, but it's like kind of like dig a little deeper into what's happening, man, and be the backbone, be the men that women need at the moment. But because I think there's been so much infiltration as to what is right and what is cute, and all of those kind of diversions and subversions, that needs to be scrubbed out. I think, you know, truth and reality is kind of simple, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you study the Russian Revolution and the tactics that the Bolsheviks used, it's exactly what they've done. You know, they kind of convinced women to join the military, and that it was demeaning for them to be at home with their kids.
Right.
If you look at the pictures of them, they have shaved heads. They look like social justice warriors with military uniforms on. But in regards to Donald Trump, one thing that is very clear from his chart is that he really deeply loves his country. He's very attached to his homeland. He made some tweets long before he ran for the presidency, questioning vaccinations,
right,
and making the connection between autism and the vaccines. I personally know at least 5 people that have autistic children, and they were perfectly normal before they were vaccinated. And I believe doesn't Baron, his youngest, have autism?
I'm not sure actually. He just seems like a very. I don't know if you've seen this on his chart, and Melania's and Baron's as well. Is that they have almost extraterrestrial connection? Yeah. And bloodlines with him. So I don't know. I'm not sure whether I've not read anything of that or am aware of that, other than, or what I've heard about Baron is that he is like very kind of like special in terms of intellect, but then that kind of comes from levels of autism anyway. They you know, are very specific, and they have a kind of like a very streamlined intelligence, if that's the right way of saying it, almost like a heightened level of intelligence and concentration in terms of skill, concentration, expression, especially when it comes to arts, you know, like savant children and music, that they can, I know, they can just like fast track where it would just take mere mortals of us years to kind of get there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I really don't know actually, in terms of if that is the case with him. I've just had the impression that he was just like an ultra smart, ultra brilliant child. But, you know, as I watch more about the way that Donald Trump talks, the way that he moves, the way that he speaks, it's a really fascinating mind to study. Mm-hmm. And as you study the way that mind works, and the fact that people don't get it, you know, which is like, it's kind of like a shame that you don't see the brilliance that's happening there. Sometimes it's like the way that I'm like, man, you know, it's like telling things as they are, being clear, and like that kind of gentle, almost people want things to be prettied up and put in cotton wool and pushed around, and look where it's got us, you know. And I just think at this point in time where we're at the point where we do need to evolve in terms of grow up individually, as instead of waiting to be fed and given out, doled out scraps of money and time, and allowed to be sovereign and in control and mature as spirits on the planet. And I'm just looking forward to living in that kind of space, and I'm finding more and more people who are getting that, who are prepared to own their shit, you know, and just look at, hang on, you know, I'm triggered by all this stuff, I'm unhealed in these areas, I need to deal with that, instead of keeping this kind of traumatic backwards and forwards going, because those are the ones, that's where it's most likely for you to be played and deceived. And the people who can move out of that are able to see truth, but you have to, like you said before, like recognize truth within yourself, really.
Yeah, I think that we will get there, Carol May, but I think that we have a bit to go yet.
Yes.
You know, but I do believe that we will. I honestly do believe that we will win this battle against the darkness that's engulfed the world, because everyone's suffering. You know, it's not just us, it's the animals. The animal kingdom, look what they do to them. What happened to all the SJWs, you know, protesting about the rabbits and the cats that the vaccinations are tested on?
Yeah.
You know, when I was growing up, you know, in the 90s, the lefties actually cared about animals. They don't care about them anymore, except to be, you know, be vegan when it suits them. But the animals that are tested by the pharmaceutical industry, they go through something that is horrific. It's torture. No one cares about them.
I do.
Me too. I love them. I love animals.
I do, you know, it's, you know, and it's just having, it's, I suppose it's getting back to, like you're talking about, being connecting back to our ancestry, and even our ancestry as who we are as souls incarnate, you know, and the hearts of we have, where we are able to just see another being, whatever it is, even down to the smallest fly, and just kind of have heart for it and compassion for it, and those are my goals. You know, I've always had that kind of like utopian version of existence, which has, you know, not always been understood. You know, it's for people who are like, well, get real. It's like, well, this is what's real for me. And within this period of time, like you say, this dark period of time that's icky, for, you know, if I go back and just think of experiences that I've had in my life, on the other side of things, times when just things look like I had like fuck all left, on the other side of it was a transformed version of myself, and I'm grateful for those experiences, because I wouldn't be who I am today. I wouldn't be able to have the excitement for life or the knowledge that I can get through anything. So somehow, you know, this is a new thing for us to all do together, and the fact that we're all in a position to do it together but individually, but you know that it's not just you, the only person going through that. You can then either get online to your soul family, or there's a couple, you know, a few friends that you can be like, okay, I don't know if I can I'm having a moment, and people really get it, as opposed to just keep trying to like push through and ignore the real feelings that we're having about what we're experiencing right now. Yeah,
it's really, you know, it's so important to find your tribe. I think many of us will, you know, this year. It's really important to have that support network, because that is something that they have tried to disintegrate. Down from the fact that people that lived in neighborhoods, or, you know, they used to be close, they looked after each other's kids, you know, they gave each other foods, and like we've really got away from that. And it's something that we have to really work on building again. It's part of being a healthy human being, is to have those human connections.
Definitely. Let me just finish off by asking you her conversations questions. So the first question is, what tools would you say has assisted in your awakening?
Obviously, astrology. Astrology is a good way to raise your consciousness. You tap into other realities and, you know, the past lives. My spirituality. I'm a Norse pagan. So that's been the and just owning my shit.
Yeah.
That's been the biggest one. You know, when you go through something over and over again, there's a little chance that you might be doing something to cause it. You know, so instead of blaming everyone, just work on yourself. Look in the mirror. Use your spiritual tools to get right into the heart of your wound.
It's the most worthy work that you'll ever do. Just speaking from experience, then you become impervious to bullshit, really, and it doesn't mean that you're not going to experience something again, but you just are able to kind of step in and through things a little bit quicker, and also not that you welcome traumatic things happening, but you recognize that it's a learning opportunity, and on the other side of it is going to be just such a better version of yourself. So I've kind of I've appreciated all of the things that I've been through, and realized, especially in the face of the way that the world is now, that it's made me way stronger than I realized that I was. I mean, I knew that I had a lot of strength, but going past that, I'm like, man, I'm actually kind of like hard as nails, but in a soft way. And that in itself has been something that I've had to calibrate as well, that there is a way of being really solid, but also being very soft and feminine and vulnerable as well. And that side of things has been the challenge, to kind of let go of the guard without descending into nothingness, so those are the things that I'm always working on, trying to like calibrate that balance of strength and femininity, vulnerability. It's a balancing, it's like spinning plates all the time, I find it. Here's another question: what tools can you share for the awakening?
What tools? If anyone wants to learn astrology, there's a really good website called astro.com, where you can drop your own chart and just kind of, use it as a learning tool. But with spiritual tools, is that what you mean? Like practices?
Well, anything. It doesn't, sometimes things are like hyper spiritual, sometimes they're basic. It's like what, for anyone who's listening in, who's going through something, who may or may not have a practice, or trying to work out how to just make it through this period of time that we're with, that you think, okay, I can throw this out to you, this might help.
Okay, my number one tool for that would be your ancestral spirituality. Because like I said, it reconnects things within you that have been broken for many, many generations. It's, it's strengthening, it's empowering. For me, it was working with the runes. And the magical initiations that go with working with the runes. A lot of people are locked up in their apartments now, and they literally have no outlet. You can go anywhere in your mind.
Yeah. Meditate,
take a shamanic journey, learn to read tarot, learn to read the runes, just learn a new skill, a chironic skill. It's all about reconnecting with ancient wisdom. Those are the tools and practices that will get us through these years and then teach others. So it becomes a global awakening. That's how it's going to happen.
Beautiful. And what are your favorite self-care rituals and practices? How do you care for you?
Self-care, I actually really love incense and aromatherapy through essential oils. But my favorite treat is just being in nature, by the ocean, in a forest, anywhere where I can get away from like other people and just be at one with nature. You can literally feel it removing the toxicity from your energy field. It's so healing. I don't think that I could ever live in a city ever again.
Mm. I'm in London at the moment, but I'm like, I don't know. I think I've done my stint here now, you know, and I think it's just working out where that space is. I don't even know if it's in the UK, and this is what I'm trying to get guidance on. It's like I know it needs to be more in nature. I don't even know if it's the UK, and I'm open to it being wherever it's going to be, and I'm just feeling into where that's going to be next, because I'm pretty flexible in terms of I could pack up and be gone. I mean, you know, present times kind of limit that, but I'm just very much about it. You know, for me, I'm thinking it may be some sort of growing community in a space in somewhere that's more rural. It's who knows, who knows, but it's feeling more like that, because city life and that hustle and bustle that I came to London for when I was in my mid-20s and was just like thirsty for it, don't want to do that anymore. And you know, seeing where the mindset is of the mass at the moment, it's like not the space for me to be here in this anymore. And I'm sure a lot of people feel it. I've spoken to a lot of friends who are like, where do we go? We're just trying to work it out. We don't know where it is yet. So
yeah, I mean, a lot of people feel the same. I think that when you reach a certain point in your spiritual work, that you start to become intolerant to the city, and you crave that, you know, the beautiful energy that and peace that only comes from nature. So I think a lot of people will move. And also, here's the thing, that the powers that be actually know that we're coming into the age of Aquarius. And you can physically wake someone up by being close to them. You know, if you live with someone or you see someone frequently and you're awakened, you can wake them up simply by being close to them. Which is why I think another reason why they're like dragging this social distancing thing out.
Interesting. And makes a lot of sense, you know. Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's like I woke up on Christmas morning and I just really wanted to be in a church, and not for any kind of like deeply religious reason. I'm just like, I just could really do with being in a space like that. And you know, there was nothing, so I just went for a major walk around a big park. But it was almost as good as I needed, but I needed a different kind of thing. Because that's my heritage is the church, for good and for bad. It's so I missed that, and it's unusual, because usually it's like on previous Christmases I'd be like, it would be the last thing on the last place I'd want to be. But this one, it was just like, of all the days, I think I'd really just, and not even be involved in the service, just wanted to kind of sit in the corner in the space, in a church space, and just be in and around and let people do what they're doing in the main thing, but just kind of be in a space like that. And I hope people, I think that on some soul level, we have to be all craving that community, even if we don't know what we're calling it, even for the people who may not even call themselves religious as such, must know that there's something is up on a soul level, and you know, just by being around, maybe that's my job when I go to the supermarket. It's just spreading that. Look how easy it is, people. Just walking around and smiling, and look, I'm not going to kill you, I just want to get that off the shelf and then have a great day. You know, it's just like, you know, I send prayers all the time. Honestly, I've never prayed more than I've prayed this year, in the last year, than I have done before. It's been a good time, because it's also shown me that the discipline and the work that I've done actually has paid off in just keeping my head straight. Even on the days when it's like, oh my gosh, this is like, I need to take a moment. Is like, but I know how I can I don't have to stay there for days and weeks on end. I just realize that I'm just having a moment, and maybe I just need to sit in that moment for a while and experience that, or it's just like, let's walk, let's meditate, let's listen to some music, sleep, eat, whatever, it's usually simple things like that pull you out of it. But that fear energy creates such monsters in your mind that you lose all sense of reason. I pray that people start to just discover simple things, even if it's pottering around in their own garden.
Yeah, I think that they will. A lot of us are still under lockdown. You can't go out to eat. You can't go to a coffee shop. You can't go to the cinema. So they're discovering, their local environments, their back garden, making a meditation room in their home, sitting with their kids or their cat. It's kind of serving a higher purpose here to reawaken the things that are important.
So what's coming up next for you? Have you got you do courses, don't you? When's that coming up?
Yeah, I teach my courses on a one-on-one basis. So I only ever have a couple of students at a time, and the intermediate astrology course is for 6 weeks, and it's 3 hours on Skype for 6 weeks. So anyone that wants to take one of my courses, I also offer a mini course. You can just go to my website. It's FionaAedgar.com.
And can you just let us know where else we can find you as well on other social medias, as well as you mentioned your website?
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Facebook, Fiona Aedgar. You can also find me on YouTube. I do have a Parler account as well. But if you just plug my name into any of those, you'll find me, because it's Edgar with an A. There shouldn't be any other Fiona Aedgars out there. I'm pretty unique that way.
That's it then. There's so many questions, but I'm so mindful of your time. But I just want to say thank you for just sharing your gift and just talking about the times coming up, because especially with an art like astrology, it's been so trashed and turned into something that's almost like guesswork and not actually something that's so specific and important in terms of like understanding what happens in ourselves internally, what happens externally, what happens within the world, and then throughout the ages and like different points of time. As I develop a deeper knowing about the benefits and the art and the skill of it, I have the utmost respect, because when I listen to people who have been in that world and it's a second language, and they kind of speak in a way that I'd probably talk about music and it sounds like gobbledygook, but it's like I hear kind of recurring things and I start to understand it. And in keeping us blind, unfortunately, keeping the masses blind to the elegance of astrology has allowed it to be kind of used for dark forces, really, and then to kind of hijacking the benefits of energy. So it's just great that more and more people are actually really starting to understand and respect how we can actually use it to see what's coming up and be able to ride the waves of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really useful tool to bypass all of the other, the TV or the radio or the so-called experts, to see the actual truth of a situation. And it's empowering for individuals, because when the bad times are coming, but then you also know when they're going to end. You can use it as a tool for spiritual growth. It can help you work through your wounds. You can use it to see if you're compatible with another person. And that's one of the reasons why they don't want you to use it, because it's empowering. And they've just trashed it, and it's been diminished into a sun sign horoscope that's printed on a red top newspaper. But it's so much more than that. It used to be taught in universities. The ancient Greeks used it, the ancient Egyptians, but it is having its day. More and more people are returning to it, and actually astrology is connected to the sign of Aquarius and the planet Uranus.
Right.
So it's going to, people are going to realize that astrologers are usually more accurate than the mainstream media.
Exactly. Well, thank you, Fiona.
Thanks, Carol May. It was really nice to speak with you, and thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you, Fiona, for being a guest on this week's Her Conversations, and thank you for listening. You can find out more about me on my website, which is carolmaywhittick.com, CarolMaywhittick. And if you go to my website, you can join my mailing list, as even though I am on varying different social media platforms, the likelihood of them being there for too much longer is very precarious. So you can send me an email on info@carolmaywhittick.com as well. So in the meantime, if you do want to find me on social media, I am on Facebook, Carol May Whittick, Twitter, Parler and Instagram under Karmic, that's CAZMICK. And as we shift, I will keep you notified. So as always, thank you so much for being here with me through this episode. Enjoy your week. Take care.